Hello everybody. One question that we get pretty often is what happens after the appraisal? And that is a great question. In today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about what happens from a buyer's perspective and from a seller's perspective. But before we get into that part, I want to talk about this just real fast. What is an appraisal? Okay, who orders it? Why does it exist? All of that kind of stuff. Why does somebody else have control over the final price of a home? And the answer is really simple. An appraisal is a tool that is used to protect the asset that the lender is securing, okay? So the market says that a house is worth this. The appraiser says that the house is worth this. The bank's gonna listen to that appraiser because they're trying to protect themselves with the asset that they're using to secure the loan that that buyer is taking. Does that make sense? Okay, so remember that the appraiser, or the appraisal rather, is not for the buyer. It is not for the seller, it is for the lender and then subsequently the investor that buys that loan should it be sold, all right? So if you keep that in mind, then you kind of understand a little bit more. And sellers, when they come up with a short appraisal, or buyers, when they come up with a high appraisal or whatever, it doesn't kind of trigger that emotional roller coaster that it might otherwise, as long as you understand who the appraisal is for. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about what happens from a buyer perspective after the appraisal is done. So the first thing that happens is the AMC, the appraisal management company, sends that appraisal over to the lender, and that lender has the underwriter look at it and make sure that it fits their criteria. Sometimes you'll see some crazy stuff where they've used a comparable, that's several miles away or something like that, and the underwriter has the ability to essentially accept or reject portions of or the entire appraisal, okay? The next thing that they do is they assign conditions, the underwriter does. And when they assign conditions, what we mean by that is sometimes the appraiser, especially in government subsidized loans, FHA, VA, those kinds of things, they'll say that it is subject to certain repairs, peeling paint, bad roofs, lacking floor covering, HVAC issues, etc. And they'll list some of those and they'll say that the appraisal, that value, is subject to those items being repaired. Well, in doing that, the underwriter then goes back and says, okay, sellers, in order for this to work, you've got to make these couple of repairs. And here's the thing, it does not matter at all what you've negotiated in your repair process, in your inspection contingency, okay? Because they're not gonna make the loan if those things aren't repaired. Cool? All right. The other thing is they'll look at the value. Let's say the value came in a little bit short. You have a couple of options. You can try to get another appraisal done, okay? That usually doesn't work because the only way that, and look right here where we talk about final or whether it's accepted, the only way that that really works is if we can find something factual that they messed up on. So square footage, or they used a wrong address, or something that is actually not an opinion-based issue. Now, sometimes an appraiser will look at comps if you provide some, especially if there are comps that weren't on the MLS. Maybe there were private sales that were done outside of the MLS. They might look at that if there was data, shall we say, that they somehow missed, okay? But a lot of times they won't. It has to be something that's actually factually incorrect. I rhymed, didn't even mean to. Actually, factually. Anyway, okay, so that's what's gonna happen on that side. If that value does come in low, then the buyer is typically gonna ask the seller, which is where we're shifting next, to make an adjustment on the price. Okay, so let's talk about this. So the seller is gonna get a notification about the appraisal, what it came in at, sort of. If it came in at value or higher, you're probably not gonna get a copy of it, sellers. You're just not, because they don't have any reason to. They're gonna say, hey, we're good on appraisal, the end, okay? If it came in low, and this is why we say we won't know the value unless it came in low. And if it came in low, they're gonna say, okay, we were under contract for $300,000, appraisal came in at $290. We're off by $10,000. Now you have an option. You have some different things that you can work through. You can either reduce your price by that $10,000. You can ask that buyer to come up with some cash, or we can somehow try to force a reappraisal. That's the hard one. Remember, we were talking about it has to have factual errors in it in order for that to happen, okay? And then the last thing, once we've got all that part of it worked out, it goes back to the underwriter. And then I wrote down on here disputes. And again, the key here is it has to be something that's factually incorrect in that most of the time. Now, we can provide those comps. Sometimes they'll make an adjustment, especially if it's a really big gap that they create. If we can find some comps that kind of narrow that gap, that might be something that they'd reconsider. So That's it. If you have any further questions, definitely let me know. And if you like this video, hit like down below, share it with your friends, and do subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching. This is Jonathan Harmon with the J. Harmon Home Team of Keller Williams.